On the night of March 31st, 2006, 27-year-old medical student Brian Shaffer walked into a bustling campus bar in Columbus, Ohio to celebrate the start of spring break with his close friends. Security cameras mounted directly above the main entrance recorded him riding the escalator up to the establishment, smiling, laughing, and chatting with people at the doorway. Yet, despite every exit being continuously monitored by high-definition video surveillance and guarded by security staff, Brian Shaffer was never seen leaving the building. He didn't exit through the front doors, he didn't slip out the emergency exits, and he didn't emerge into the surrounding streets. Within hours, a young man with a bright future simply ceased to exist inside a crowded building filled with hundreds of witnesses. Nearly 2 decades later, the vanishing of Brian Shaffer remains one of the most terrifying, perplexing, and haunting missing persons mysteries in modern history. A case where a human being walked into a confined space on camera and vanished into absolute nothingness. To understand the profound tragedy behind this riddle, one must look at who Brian Shaffer was on that fateful spring night. Brian was a handsome, popular second-year medical student at the Ohio State University College of Medicine. He was known by classmates and family as hardworking, warm, and ambitious, with a deep love for music and travel. However, beneath his optimistic smile, Brian was carrying immense grief. Just 3 weeks prior to his disappearance, his beloved mother, Renee, had passed away after a brave battle with cancer. Despite the overwhelming heartbreak, Brian was pushing forward with his life. He was deeply in love with his girlfriend, Alexis, and had secretly planned to take her on a romantic vacation to Miami that upcoming week, where many believed he intended to ask for her hand in marriage. On Friday, March 31st, after completing a grueling week of medical exams, Brian decided it was time to unwind. He met up with his close friend, William Florence, known to everyone as Clint, at a popular local spot called the Ugly Tuna Saluna, located in the South Campus Gateway Complex in Columbus. The Ugly Tuna was a thriving second-story establishment accessible primarily by a single set of escalators near the main entrance. As the night progressed, Brian and Clint hopped to several other establishments in the Arena District, enjoying drinks and catching up before meeting another friend, Meredith Reed, who offered to drive them back to the Ugly Tuna around 1:30 in the morning for last call. At 1:55 in the morning on April 1st, security cameras stationed right outside the Ugly Tuna captured Brian standing near the escalator talking to 2 young women. On the video footage, Brian appears relaxed and happy, exchanging brief pleasantries before stepping out of the camera's frame, appearing to head back toward the entrance of the bar. That brief, grainy frame of security footage would become the final confirmed visual record of Brian Shaffer ever taken. When 2 o'clock last call arrived and the bar began clearing out, Clint and Meredith waited outside on the patio near the escalators for Brian to emerge. As hundreds of patrons filed down the escalators into the night, Brian was nowhere to be found. Assuming he had either walked back to his apartment nearby or slipped out without telling them, his friends eventually left. But when the weekend passed and Brian failed to show up for his scheduled flight to Miami with his girlfriend on Monday morning, widespread panic set in. Brian was officially reported missing, triggering one of the most intense, exhaustive search operations in the history of the Midwest. Detectives with the Columbus Police Department immediately focused their attention on the security footage from the Ugly Tuna Saloon. The venue was situated inside a modern, highly secured commercial complex equipped with a vast network of state-of-the-art surveillance cameras monitoring every public doorway, hallway, and parking area. Investigators sat down and meticulously reviewed every single frame of footage recorded that night from every camera operating in the complex. They watched every single person who rode the escalator up into the bar and then cross-referenced every individual who rode the escalator down or walked through the exit doors when the bar closed. They successfully identified and accounted for every single patron, employee, and visitor who entered and left the establishment that night, except one. Brian Shaffer was recorded entering the bar, but he was never recorded leaving. Puzzled by the footage, forensic teams searched the entire venue from top to bottom. They inspected the main floor, the kitchen, the private offices, the storage rooms, and even searched the building's ventilation shafts and trash compactors. Detectives expanded their search to the immediate surrounding area, utilizing police bloodhounds, dive teams in nearby water systems, and a helicopter radar. Search dogs picked up Brian's scent near the bar area, but the track cold stopped dead at the building's exterior wall, as if his physical presence had simply evaporated into thin air. As weeks turned into months with zero physical evidence, several compelling theories emerged to explain how a man could vanish from a monitored venue. The first major theory suggested foul play occurred inside the building or in the service corridors behind the scenes. The Ugly Tuna was undergoing minor construction at the time, and the secondary service door led into a dark, unmonitored construction site that exited onto an alleyway. Some investigators speculated that Brian might have wandered into this private service area, gotten into an altercation, or suffered a fatal fall, and that his remains were secretly moved out of the building, hidden inside service bins or construction bags away from camera view. However, thorough forensic sweeps of the construction site turned up no blood, no clothing fibers, and no signs of struggle. A second theory proposed that Brian intentionally orchestrated his own disappearance to escape the crushing grief of losing his mother and the overwhelming pressure of medical school. Supporters of this theory point out that Brian was an avid traveler who often spoke about moving to a remote island to live a simple life. Some wonder if Brian maneuvered past the security cameras on purpose, perhaps wearing a hat or coat to blend into the crowd, and slipped into the night to start an entirely new life under an assumed identity. However, family and friends strongly reject this idea, noting that Brian left behind his automobile, his wallet, his passport, and all his bank accounts, which have remained completely untouched since 2006. A third, darker possibility is that Brian left the venue undetected through the unmonitored service door and met with foul play out on the streets of Columbus. In the early morning hours, the surrounding neighborhood had areas of high crime. If Brian walked out into a dark alley alone, he could have fallen victim to a random robbery or violence, with his perpetrators disposing of the evidence far from the scene. Yet, despite massive rewards offered by law enforcement and private search funds, no body, no personal belongings, and no credible tips have ever materialized. Tragically, the aftermath of Brian's disappearance brought even more heart-wrenching sorrow to the Shaffer family. Just 2 years after Brian vanished, his father, Randy Shaffer, was killed in a freak storm when a heavy tree branch fell during a windstorm in his yard. Randy had spent every single day searching for his missing son, leaving behind a heartbroken younger brother, Derek Shaffer, as the sole surviving member of the immediate family. Today, the case of Brian Shaffer remains officially open and actively investigated by the Columbus Police Department and the FBI. Advanced digital age analysis continues to re-examine the original surveillance tapes, utilizing modern image enhancement software and facial recognition technology to scan the crowds leaving the bar in hopes of finding a match. The ugly Tuna Saluna has since closed its doors, but the mystery haunting that location endures as a chilling anomaly in the annals of missing persons cases. The story of Brian Shaffer is a haunting reminder of how fragile human existence can be, and how a person can disappear in a room full of people without leaving a single trace. It challenges our belief in modern surveillance, proving that even in a world covered by cameras, true phantoms still exist. The deeper we examine the shadows of the past, the darker the truth becomes. If you want to help us continue uncovering forgotten mysteries and exposing the dark history behind unsolved cases, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on all notifications right now. Share this video across every platform and leave a comment below with your theory on what really happened to Brian Shaffer. The deeper we dig, the darker the truth becomes.